All right, man, it's T-Man, and I'm back with one more video before I cut out. It's on Massive Iron. You know this dude, right? I think he does like powerlifting. Talks a lot about bodybuilding stuff. I don't know. Um, anyway, so Massive Iron, he says he's a real lifting slave, bro. This guy is a real gym lifting, recruiting, fitness slave, and a gear slave because he's on gear. Massive Iron, Steve Shaw. You guys know him, man. Done video before on him. People know him on the internet. Finally, his channel got up to 100,000. Took forever. It was always stuck on 50,000. I thought that thing would never grow. Anyway, so Massive Iron, Steve Shaw says, why do science-based lifters push high-frequency muscle protein synthesis? That makes absolutely no sense. I don't know.
Why these science-based guys push high frequency?
Why do these science-based guys push high frequency? And what's a high frequency supposed to do exactly?
It became the soup of the day many years back.
Yeah. Soup of the day.
We got into this world of muscle protein synthesis.
Yeah, what about muscle protein synthesis? It usually happens when there's an adaptation. But if there's no adaptations, guess what? There's no protein synthesis. There's no protein synthesis. I'm not joking, man. Fuck.
Where everybody thought you had to. Now let's backtrack, and I'm going to show you guys a clip because I like to show this clip. It's very, very important.
There's no
and while I'm trying
synthesis.
to find the clip, I am going to babble on just for a second. But back in the day, where this all started was
what?
the idea that, muscle protein synthesis after 24 to 48 hours. I want you to listen to this part because it's 48 hours. The idea that after...
no, it can be 72 hours. It can go a lot longer than that. Protein synthesis, if you get an adaptation, protein synthesis is extended for the entire time that muscle is repaired until it is repaired and remodeled. You understand me? It must be. Blood levels are elevated. Protein synthesis is extended.
48 hours, muscle protein synthesis was basically dead.
He just keeps talking about protein synthesis. He doesn't even know what builds muscle. Here's the thing, man. If you work out and you're adapted, what about protein synthesis? Let me explain this. When you walk around all day, muscle is breaking down and synthesizing protein. Listen to the word. It's breaking down proteins and synthesizing all day long. See what I mean? It's not an energy source. It cannot be stored as an energy source in your muscle. You understand me? You cannot eat protein. Is not going to store as an energy source like glycogen, blowing up your muscles, making these pretend muscles. You understand me? Like the glycogen muscles. It's not going to do that. That's not how it works. You can go and live forever. People live forever in the gym, and they're always like, I got protein. There's a window now for protein synthesis. Okay, go and eat. Go and eat protein synthesis. There's a window also for protein breakdown. There's a large window. Oh, I wonder why I'm getting smaller. Well, because you're exercising a lot. If you work in a factory and you don't eat enough protein, what's going to happen? You're going to shrink, right? You're going to get small. Your muscles are going to atrophy. You're going to feel weak. Why are you feeling weak? Because they're atrophying. Because you're losing myofibrillars. That's the mass of the muscle fiber. That's what the mass is, these contractile proteins. You understand me? But you don't just build more because you exercise and you're adapted. See what I mean? Yeah, it's crazy.
In the water, okay? It was dead in the water.
Yeah, okay.
And you had to retrain a muscle group to maximize muscle building. Group? Okay, so
dude, I don't train muscles. I don't train them to do anything. I damage them, and then they build myofibrillars in series. They build these myofibrillars, these sarcomere in series and in parallel. Yeah, they enhance you, and they enhance you in specific. They have specific things how they enhance your performance and stuff, your strength, your performance, a bunch of stuff.
It was the original.
That's the premise of bodybuilding. It's to enhance strength, power, speed, and performance. That's the IMD training. I don't know what kind of training you do. What kind of training you do?
Bug that was planted in everybody's ear that was after 48 hours,
Okay.
muscle protein synthesis was dead and you had no benefit.
Again, it can go for 72 hours and longer. So I don't know what you're talking about. They talk about 48, they talk about 24, 48, 72 hours. But he didn't even mention 72. He just says 24, 48. You think a myofibular can build within 24 hours, 48 hours? I don't know. It depends. I told you before, if you were to get these nuclei every time you got a damaging session, then you build on the next amount of nuclei that are donated. They're like little workers, construction workers. The more you have of them, the quicker they can construct your house. Listen, if all you have are 2 construction workers building a house for you, how long do you think they're going to take to build that fucking house? You understand me? The material is there. Let's say the material, or maybe the material is not even there, then you're really fucked. But here's the thing. If the material is there to build the house, but you only have 2 workers, 2 nuclei guys, these nuclei, what do you think they're going to do, bro? What do you think they're going to do? See what I mean? Now, let's say you have 100. Well, now you got 100. What if you have 200 or 300? So every time you come back, you do a damaging session, if you are, because most people are not, 99% of people are not, because they don't know how to. They're all adapted to their exercises because they're dumb. And so if you were shooting for damaging sessions like you're supposed to, EIMD exercise training and bodybuilding, because bodybuilding is based on the premise of eccentric exercise, if you were doing that, then guess what? Every damaging session you come back, with time, it's like inflation, it takes off. The more of these nuclei you get, the more damaging sessions, the more chances you have of building more myofibulars, more sarcomeres and parallel series. Get it, bro? Will enhance your performance. It will enhance your performance and you'll be super strong.
Benefit from training, regardless of how you train. Now, we know this is patent nonsense.
Yeah, I love this guy. Regardless of how you train, how do you train?
Now,
he makes it sound like muscles are pets. You're training a pet to do tricks.
But everybody fell into the boat because what happens in lifting is that something like this will come along.
Yes, what happens in lifting?
And you get a large percentage of people that are afraid of being wrong or afraid of thinking for themselves or using common sense or looking back at the history of lifting and saying this doesn't really jive with what we know to be the history of lifting.
Real protein synthesis only happens when muscles are repairing and remodeling, but yours are not repairing and remodeling. Why would they need to remodel if they're adapted?
We know that we went through a whole era where all people used was body part splits. We know even...
I love this. All people use body part splits, but body part splits and drop sets and cluster sets and all these fake things, pyramiding and bulk dieting and all that. It's all fake. It doesn't work. The premise of building myofibulars and protein synthesis is just based on eccentric exercise. That's all. That's it. Eccentric overload. That's it. Basically, eccentric overload. And you can handle more load in the eccentric than you could in the concentric. It's really simple. So you never pass like I said in my videos, you never pass the isometric to concentric. You always stay below isometric within the concentric. So it's concentric coming up, concentric going down. You never pass isometric and then it's eccentric going up, eccentric going down. You never pass isometric going to concentric. Okay, dude, it's really simple. Fuck.
And if you don't like a body part split, we know we went through a whole era where people trained, a lot of people.
I did all those things, those so-called body splits, because people are trying to get you into doing these things. They were a waste of time. I never felt any damage. I was always adapted and nothing was fucking going on there. That's why I went back to doing these damaging exercises. In the past, I went back to doing damaging exercises because it wasted fucking time. There's no growth, nothing going on there. I got better at lifting concentrically, that's about it. But There was nothing fucking going on there. It was just bullshit. And I didn't want to enslave myself to be good. I have to keep coming in and I have to, oh my God, I have to be good at lifting concentrically. So I have to enslave myself to concentric exercises. Once I built my body, I realized, wow, so it's really based on just building more myofibrillars. So you have natural strength before you go into the gym, your natural strength. So the question is this: how do you increase your natural strength? Well, it's really simple: building more myofibrillars, right? In series and in parallel. The more you build, the more your natural strength shall increase more. So if you increase your natural strength through myofibrillar growth, guess what? You don't have to practice at lifting those weights eventually with the time. They'll always be very light for you to handle. You're not going to be enslaved to it. Like, oh, if I went away on vacation for 2 months or something, or I didn't live for 5 months or something, or 3 months or something. Oh my God, my concentric nervous system, my strength must be gone already. Oh, I have to go back to the gym and I have to my gains are going, or I have to go and practice at it before it goes away or something. Like you have to keep practicing at something because it'll go away.
Trained twice a week, which goes against the 24 to 48 hour muscle.
Yeah, those guys too, training twice a week, once a week, 5 days a week. It's because they too are maintaining the sarcoplasmic gains. That's another problem. So that requires maintenance. You have to fucking maintain these fake, phony sarcoplasmic gains. You have to maintain the fake, phony concentric lifts. It's fucking stupid, man. Stupid. But when you build myofibrillars, they don't really require a lot of maintenance other than protein synthesis needs to exceed that breakdown so you don't atrophy. The only reason people atrophy if you build muscle and the muscle itself atrophies, you lose these sarcomeres. It's not because you're lifting weights. It's because you stop eating a certain amount of protein to maintain them. See what I mean? You have to eat so much. Anybody can lose weight if they don't eat. In other words, if you don't eat, you lose weight, right? Even fat people or whatever people or people with big muscle bellies, if they don't eat, they'll shrink. So you have to eat just like anything to maintain it. That's about it, basically, really. Because one guy asked me, how do you maintain all that and you don't work out? Eating, bro, eating. Once you build myofibrillars, you maintain them through eating. You don't maintain them to keep lifting weights. That doesn't make any sense. I'm not saying you can't lift weights. You should every so often. You should go and lift. I'm saying that they don't require maintenance once they're already there. What's maintaining your myofibrillars that you were born with? Ask yourself this question. What's maintaining it? Weights? Were weights maintaining your myofibrillars? Is that what's maintaining them? No. See what I'm trying to explain to you? So once you actually really build new ones, what maintenance do they require? None. They just require that, well, you're bigger now and heavier, so you require more what? Energy in the source of what? Food, protein, whatever. You get it? Yeah.
Protein synthesis window. We know when we look at the history of lifting that this didn't really line up with the practical results people were getting. So there's still a lot of
What were they getting?
residual fear on the part of influencers. When I say they can't think for themselves,
Okay.
it sounds very disrespectful, but we have to apply common sense.
Okay.
I am not trying to say there is one way to train, and you guys that watch this channel,
There is only one way to train if you want to build. Man, there's only one way to train if you want to build these fucking myofibrillars, these sarcomere in parallel and in series. There's only one way to train. Eccentric overload training. That's it. There's only one way, bro.
understand that. Nothing could be further from the truth. The majority of my clients use a degree of frequency each week, but we tailor the frequency to their practical needs because we understand the important part is hard training over time. Now,
Your needs, hard training over to what are you talking about? Man, eccentric exercise is used in everything. It's used in everything to enhance people. It's used in rehabilitation, a whole bunch of stuff. What are you talking about, man?
there have been two previous meta-analyses, and a meta-analysis looks at all the body of research. that basically says when volume is equated, meaning you're getting the same amount of weekly volume.
One damaging session can take a person right out of being a mummy. You understand me? To the depths of where he's fucking atrophying. One damaging session can take him right out of atrophy. And it can revive people on the verge of dying. What, just one damaging session, bro, can fucking do all that, can reverse all that. It can do a lot of stuff. When those what do you call it? The satellite cell comes out of quiescence and it proliferates, differentiates into myoblasts. These myoblasts, when they go around, right? Because it's differentiating into other cells. The myoblasts, wow, they repair DNA. They do. The nuclei, they do a bunch of stuff too. These T cells come out too as well. So they clean the T cells when they come out. They clean up the senescent cells. Now, the myoblast cells, well, they've got a lot of power too. They can fucking clean. They can restore, fix DNA damage. So it does a lot, man. Eccentric exercise training does a lot. Man, it does. It can fucking do a lot. It can wear off myogenic declines, get rid of senescent cells, can do a lot of shit. Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you train. One day a week, it's the weekly volume is important, and how you slice it up. You do 12 sets of chest a week.
About weekly volume, it's important.
You could do 12 on one day. You could do 6 each on 2 days. You could do 4 on 3 days. It doesn't matter as long as you're training hard and the weekly volume is the same.
No, it does matter. This whole training hard thing is meaningless. It matters how you train. It matters.
2 previous meta-analyses that explain this was the case. But still, you have people that are just stuck on old ways. And people will always get stuck on old ways. That's not...
Okay, what? Old ways? What's old way? There's only... Look, man, there's only 2 ranges of motion in exercise. There's eccentric and concentric, you fool. You old fool. So what does concentric do exactly? And what does eccentric do? That's all you have to know. What does one do that the other doesn't? That's all you have to understand. See what I mean? And then you have to go for the one that's superior to the other one. And so eccentric exercise is superior to concentric exercise. Why? For mass, muscle mass, and what? Strength. Get it, dude?
An insult. One thing I find curious is that people will come after me when I try to explain this, in some sort of rational, logical way. That's how grounded people can be in dogma. What I'm about to show you is a clip from Data-Driven Strength, and I keep this on my Instagram, and I share this on my Instagram for a reason. This is Josh at Data-Driven Strength, and Josh in this clip, which was put out February 11th, nearly 2 months ago, is talking about a meta-analysis that he did at Data-Driven Strength, which was about to come out. I don't know if it came out, but what you are about to hear is him explain that frequency does not matter. This is the third meta-analysis that came to this conclusion when volume was equated. So please take a listen. This is not some random opinion. This is the third meta-analysis on the topic of how frequently should you train.
We printed a meta-analysis where we said, okay, if we were to just control for every variable we can in a training program and just look at the effects of frequency, so the number of times per week the measured muscle is trained, what are the effects, right? Do higher frequencies lead to greater muscle growth? Do lower frequencies lead to...
No, none of them do. You want to know what leads to muscle growth, you fool? Eccentric exercise. That's what. Damaging sessions eccentrically. They lead to muscle growth. Okay? Are we clear, man? Are we fucking clear, dude?
To greater muscle growth. Maybe there's some sort of inverted U effect where there is a benefit of higher...
That volume stuff doesn't grow muscles. Damage grows muscles. Or you understand me? They grow myofibrillars in parallel and series, dude. That is what makes up the mass of the muscles. That's where the mass comes from. They're called contractile proteins. They contract. These fibers they contract are called myofibrillars. They're called sarcomeres in series and in parallel, you fool.
Frequency up to a point, but then it's actually worse, right? So anything's on the table, any sort of relationship.
No, there's nothing up to a point and then this and that. It doesn't do any of that. Okay? It doesn't do any of that. You want to know what it fucking does? It fucking gets damage and then it repairs and it remodels. Okay? These sarcomere in parallel and series. Okay, that makes up the mass of the fucking muscle. Now, there's some fake phony mass you can call it. It's called sarcoplasmic. That's probably what you're talking about with volume training, because in PubMed, they have that one 6 weeks of high volume resistance training by trained young men is largely attributed to what? Sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. So maybe that's what they're talking about, this goofball and this guy. But that's not protein synthesis. That's based on glycogen loading.
Is on the table. And basically what we found, honestly, is a whole lot of nothing, right? Yeah. You could maybe...
There you go, a whole lot of nothing, because you don't know what you're talking about, nothing.
And say that going from a frequency of 1 time per week to a frequency of 2 times per week does increase your muscle hypertrophy.
Yeah, it'll increase your muscle hypertrophy 1 time, 2 times a week, whatever, because now you're an endurance slave. You're adapted, it's endurance, and you're just exercising. There's no damage. So how will it hypertrophy? The sarcoplasm will hypertrophy because you're eating carbs. That's why.
But that effect was really, really small.
Yeah.
And then beyond 2 times per week, it wasn't worse, but it also wasn't clearly better. Now, again, it's important to keep in mind that...
Of course not, but have you even mentioned 1 time a week? What happens when they work out 1 time a week? And they actually put in effort to damage these muscles. I'm not talking about they came in once a week and they played with the weights like a friend of mine called Peter. He's a goof. He comes into the gym, he pretends he's exercising, and then he goes home. Within 10 minutes, he wants to leave.
That analysis was with everything else controlled for, right?
Yeah,
so
okay.
How close to failure the sets were, and also the total number of sets training week.
What about a set that goes to failure? What is that going to do? So load more glycogen? There's a bigger window for glycogen because you went to failure? Okay, I got it.
And that's a really important one because
yeah,
in practice, oftentimes if you're training a muscle 2 or 3 times a week instead of just 1 time per week, that's also going to increase the total volume.
Okay, so we want to unpack.
That made absolutely no sense.
This really quickly. The original foundation of you have to train frequently came off the muscle protein synthesis era that was preaching 24 to 48 hours. Basically, at that time, 48 hours can only be interpreted as training a muscle group 3 times a week, right? That's basically what it came down to. So the big point here was that he said in his meta-analysis, there was really no difference between a body part split and training 2 times a week. He said you could squint and maybe see a hair, but over the long run, that hair is not going to matter. And that's what the other meta-analyses have stated. And that's where we're at scientific-wise.
Okay.
Now, anybody that says they're science-based that doesn't have their grounding in these meta-analyses isn't really science-based. They're very dogmatic.
Okay.
And they're just attaching science-based to their name. If we're truly science-based, we're familiar with this reality, and even if we don't believe it or we hypothesize or...
Man, science-based just means experience. They run several tests to find out. They're looking for an outcome, that's all. I mean, if you don't know what you're looking for, then there you go. I'm not looking for a test where they did this test, they did this to find out what they got here and find out what they got. I don't care. I don't give a shit about that. I read the science where it tells me what builds muscles. Get it, dude? Shit.
Speculate that there's something else going on. We have to at least say this is the modern science, and we've had 3 meta-analyses.
You see the problem with these fitness gurus? They absolutely know nothing about what builds muscle. So He's just yammering on about bullshit, back and forth, back and forth.
By 3 different sources that have said the same thing. So I wouldn't say these science-based guys are really truly science-based. Now,
Okay.
he said once you get past 2 times a week, there is no benefit at all, which
I
absolutely.
use science to prove what I say, but I don't use science. Well, I don't use science to build my body. I have experience, and my experience tells me already what builds muscle damage. Okay, dude? It's really
completely
simple.
destroys the foundation of the muscle protein synthesis argument.
Okay.
It absolutely crumbles it into a non-argument. So it destroys the whole foundation of where all this came from.
Why? Because you
the
don't-
last bit
because
we
you don't
want to
understand
unpack
it?
here is that
Because you don't understand it.
the reason why a lot of these science-based
reason?
guys, I'm not air quoting them to be disrespectful, got into the pool of frequency was because when you looked at these frequency studies, what we didn't realize is that they were having the frequency guys perform more weekly volume.
Yeah.
Hear this out because this is important. Not all studies, because we can't generalize, but when we did an analysis, a lot of the frequency studies that showed a greater impact in results had more weekly volume. They were making people do more. And you have beginners and you have novices and you have all these people, and you have 2 groups, a body part split, and then a frequency. And the frequency guys were doing more work. So there was a bias, and that's why it showed that the frequency guys were getting more out of it. What we come to understand is that it wasn't the frequency at all. It was the weekly volume. When the weekly volume is the same, and we're not advocating a higher weekly volume, we're advocating hard training and evolving volume based on needs. When the weekly volume is the same between a body part split and training a body part 1.5 times per week and 2 times per week and 2.5 times per week and 3 times per week or 5 times per week in the drunk Russian, when the volume is the same, it does not matter how you train. That is what the modern science says.
I know that. You want to know why? Because you're adapted. It's sarcoplasmic training. That's why it doesn't matter.
That is what each of the 3 meta-analyses over the last 3 to 4 years have said. And some people don't like to hear this, but that's their problem. And, I'm not trying to be biased here.
Okay.
I'm not trying to be dogmatic.
I'm sure you're not.
I'm trying to tell you guys what I believe is the important thing based on my opinion of what I've seen as someone that has studied training, my whole entire adult life, and laying that side by side with the science, is that it doesn't matter how you train. But the important thing here is that we focus on hard training. We focus on the massive iron pillars of success. I put together in my book Massive Omnibus, and you can find that at superlivingtoday.com. And my original book, Massive Iron, had the pillars of success. What are the pillars of success?
I don't know what
They say that we don't have to worry about programs. We don't have to worry about frequency. We don't have to worry about specific exercises.
Okay.
There are certain pillars that exist that we need to worry about. And if we follow these pillars, we will be successful regardless of training program, regardless of frequency, regardless of exercise selection. So what are these pillars of success? Number 1, that you have hard training in the mix, okay? You are trying to train hard. Yesterday I posted on social media, we're trying to beat the logbook. We're trying to improve. We're trying to get as much out of every set as we can. My first book, Massive Iron, it's probably 11
What are you training the heart to do exactly? Beat faster?
years old by now. I talked about maximizing every set. What I spoke about back then was to maximize your progress, you want to go into the gym and try to maximize or get everything you can out of every set. And what I said in my book specifically is if you maximize every set, you're going to maximize every workout. And if you maximize every workout,
Okay.
you're going to maximize the muscle building process. So
So if you maximize every workout, you're going to maximize the muscle building process. Even though you're not exercising eccentrically to cause it to damage. Okay, got it. Yes.
Is hard training, or the mentality that I'm going to get everything I can.
Just go in there and hope for the best. Hard training will do it. Yes. Listen to this guy. He's got the secret.
Set. Now, you also need progressive overload.
You
We aren't chasing 1 rep max strength. We're chasing improvement over time, and that's a different thing. At the end of the day, though, you will not get close to your max natural potential if you aren't a lot stronger than when you started. So the fairy tale that you can build a lot of muscle without progressively overloading and getting a lot stronger than you are now is simply that, a fairy tale. You can't continue to use the same weight on side lateral raises for 10 years and think that just because you're doing them with some form of intensity technique and never increasing the weight that you're going to get mass out of that. You won't. So
how are you going to get mass out of that if you're adapted lifting that weight? Doesn't make any sense, man, bro. This guy is out to lunch somewhere. This crazy. This is a long video, 17 minutes. I don't know.
We have hard training, we have progressive overload, we have consistency, which is a huge pillar, and we can kind of brush that off and say,
I love all the fancy names. I just need one. You know what we have? Eccentric exercise overload.
Yeah, of course we need to be consistent, but how many people are really consistent with their approach when it comes to hard training and progressive overload and nutrition? We need a reasonable volume. What is a reasonable volume? You start with something that works for your schedule. How many days a week can you train? 3, 4, 5, whatever.
Yeah.
You start with a reasonable volume based on that foundation of pragmatism. What can I train hard in that period of time? And then we evolve volume based on needs, or we evolve our programming based on needs. I'm doing pendley rows and I don't like 8 rep sets. Maybe I change those from 3 of 8 to 4 sets of 6. Is it a reasonable swap? If it's a reasonable swap, that's evolving training based on needs. So you need a reasonable volume and you need a reasonable exercise selection. We are not focused on one specific exercise. I have to do squats. I have to do leg press. I have to do hack squats. I have to do lunges. Any influencer, and I want you to remember this, that goes on this box called YouTube or this box called Instagram and tells you that any exercise is magic for hypertrophy is lying to you. They do not understand the nature of hypertrophy. There are no magic exercises. There are no magic splits. There are no magic progression approaches. What you need, rather than a magic exercise, is a quality selection of exercises. We understand that we need a reasonable weekly volume, and we need a reasonable selection of exercises, impactful exercises. We need exercises that feel good for us, that don't beat up our body, that don't get us injured, that give us a good feel and stress in the areas we're trying to stress. And we need exercises that have a progressive overload opportunity. You can't have a selection of exercises that don't allow for progression. You need some big hitters, some exercises that have a progression opportunity. So we also need things like patience. We need things like focused bulking. These are the pillars of success. And if you have these in place, and again, you can find them at my book, Massive Iron, or the updated version, Massive Omnibus, at my website, superlivingtoday.com. I also have a free PDF. I'm not just trying to sell you crap. I have a free PDF on the Massive Iron Pillars of Success. If you have these in place, frequency doesn't matter. Workouts don't matter. Exercises don't matter.
They do.
Your progressive overload opportunity or approach doesn't matter. All that matters is hard training and nailing these pillars. And if you think this is bullshit, Lay this side by side compared to every lifter in the past 70 years. They all train differently. They all have a different exercise selection. They all have a different way of approaching progressive
But at the end of the day, they're all adapted to their exercises zero.
overload. They all have different splits and they all have different frequencies.
Sure.
So I ask you, the next time this comes up, who is in the right corner? The centrists that look at the history of training and try to analyze the commonalities or the pillars of success, or the bullshit artists who are making money off of pushing magic splits, magic exercises, magic frequencies, magic rest in between sets, and all other kinds of bullshit. It is for you to decide, but that is my case.
Okay. I'll see you in the next one. Tell what you think about that, friends. Like, subscribe, support the channel. That was ridiculous.